Welcome back to the CIO Lifeline. Today's topic is the power of peer groups, the benefit communities like this bring, the makeup of these peer groups. What do you talk about? How do you apply that to both business and your personal life? And this topic has two parts. First one we're going to cover today is the origins and the benefits that come with groups like this. What's the makeup of these peer groups? Do you introduce vendors into it? Is it just your peers? Is it tied to the systems you use? Lots of things go into the formation of this. Our next episode, we bring in Bill McDonough. Bill is a managing partner of Renaissance Executive Forums, which is a franchise of peer advisory groups. Looking forward to his expertise and what has made him successful over those 15 years. Don't want to miss that episode. Stick around. This was an exciting topic. And when it comes to peer groups, it brought me back to years back when I ran a local user group for Dynamics Nav and Business Central. Formed it in Cleveland, Ohio, called it the Great Lakes chapter. We had our kickoff at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it was shortly after that you really starts to resonate and you understand the power of community and groups like that coming together. I mean, you're in your own business, your own organization, tend to be an island in of itself. And you have your frustrations, you have your ideas, you have the strategy that you're forming together. But man, the power of bringing like-minded people together in the room and sharing those ideas, sharing those frustrations, ideation sessions. There's a lot that goes into this.
It is, I've just seen it change so many people's lives because it's a trusted network. It's the give and take. It's just not the takers. It's you have to give and take and participate. And it's really the power of collective intelligence. Super cool to see in action. And even with companies that have went through generational transformation, sons taking over, daughters taking over, there's multiple people helping each other out even through that. And that's just stuff you do once in your lifetime. So you want to have somebody that you trust that's been through it.
I work for a company that's headquartered in Buffalo, New York. We're in manufacturing. I'm interested in joining a peer group. Where do you begin?
The way it works with Bill's organization, and which I've been very a part of, and I actually ran one of the groups. He has about 10 or 12 groups now. But you just visit a group, talk to the people, get to know them, because there's got to be that chemistry. See how they problem solve together. There's always usually an education component. Remember we talked about you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most, and you really should take note of that. I mean, it's, I love my wife, I love my daughters and stuff, but they're not going to necessarily help me with my business. When I have business issues that I need to solve, that I need blind spot coverage on, because we all have about 30% blind spots, right? And we just need them covered. And I think, getting involved with something like that raises your average of the 5 people you hang around with, because you got people going through the same things that you can just problem solve with.
But if you're just curious what's within earshot of where you reside and there's interest in joining one, how do you start that process? Or what's the best advice for that?
You could search. I mean, peer groups have been around for a long time. I know Renaissance Executive Forums is a franchise worldwide. You could start out with some ad hoc peer groups if you don't have a franchise local, but there is a lot of power to the structure and bringing global awareness and from a strict format standpoint also, just so it stays consistent. Some of the ones that start up on their own, they just lose the fizzle. They just fizzle out over time. And if you're going to get involved in something, you want to make sure people are committed to it and they're committed to each other, because Renaissance Executive Forums is the mechanism, but really it's the people and their commitment to each other is where the real power comes in. I mean, if you say you're going to go to a meeting half day a month, you need to show up. I mean, we all got busy schedules, but the commitment to each other really needs to be there. And because that's how you really get the value and help each other out for real.
Again, if I go back to my own experience, this was the challenge, right? It's the idea is fantastic. you kick it off, and then you see, and we'll cover this in our next episode, but if you look at, there's three types of people. You have your always are going to be there. Your diehards. I mean, you could have it in, in a meat packing plant during shift change time, and they're going to show up. Then you have your occasionals, your members. Yeah, I can make it in April, May, not so much, half attendance. Then you have your one and dones. And my focus has always been okay on the one and dones, because if I can convert them into one of the other two groups, I'm going to continue to grow this out. But those are some of the things that I look forward to diving into.
You're right on, Tony. It's the one and dones. Yeah, we usually, if they don't see the value, we really don't want them in the group.
Get your ass and get your things and get out of here.
You know, getting the people, getting those the two, three, up to the four that's always going to show up, and being committed to each other. I mean, that's really because it's almost like your private board. And if you don't see value in that, then you shouldn't do it. Because I mean, there's a ton of value in having your private board. We all have issues. We all have things that come up that we need to talk out loud and get it out of our head. I mean, sometimes these ideas are great in our head. And when you talk it out, it's like it's stupid as heck.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life, Tom.
Yes, it's horrible.
It's just, you got to get it out. You got to get it out of your head and talk about it and get it on the table and push it around with people that can help decipher it for you.
I think of when I first joined the Microsoft community, my interest in joining a group of some kind started with me going to Microsoft sites, and what you end up finding is they're really dense. It felt like anything but community. It just was just volumes of technical articles and just things that to me were professorial and very corporate-y, if that's the right way to say it. But then I was introduced, so the partner that we brought on for our ERP system introduced me to a true user group community, and that's the key, right? You want something that's user driven or peer driven, not vendor driven. I think that's an important distinction. The power is when you're together and you're collaborating amongst peers. But if I'm asking people to give up half their day or all their day, I want it to be someplace engaging and fun in and of itself. So I looked at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had a meeting room. I was able to work out a $20 per member ticket. So it had lunch brought in. So we had catered lunch, and we had 4 hours of it was awesome. We had 20 people in the room, so it wasn't overly crowded. Had a couple morning sessions, had lunch, had some afternoon sessions at the end, handed them a ticket, and you were able to spend a few hours in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before you left. So love that.
I've been doing this for a while, and usually quarterly we go to one of the members' companies, and we have the meeting at their site. They give us a tour, so we get to know what they do. And I'll tell you what, that is so stinking cool, because you see the people in action, you see their company, so you're just not seeing this one person talk about issues, which are very important, but you get to go on site and see what they have, what they built up, and then just the key is to make it real, right? Not like you said, getting all technical and it's highfalutin up here. It's like, no, real things that people have went through the same thing, that you guys could talk about how to solve certain issues that you're going through. And everybody has issues every month that you should be asking somebody else to cover blind spots of something you're not seeing.
It's a great point, and it helps build that community. You can hear someone grieve or share their experiences around the table, but then if you get to have a chance to see what their backyard looks like, and it starts to resonate, it's like, oh, so this was, yeah, remember you talking about the challenge you had? I see that, right? And it becomes more engaging, and again, back to that community building, and it's a change of venue. To me, if a group meets in the same meeting room, rented space area, uh, you talked about the fizzle. I love how you said it, because that's very real. I've in my 4 years being in the local user group, can't tell you how many times that a group is formed only to fizzle, and usually that fizzle was after the first year.
Yep. And then two other issues that I've seen that work well in these type of meetings. Where's their mental state? There's a lot of exercises. You show 40 pictures of different situations. It's like, where are you today? It's the ladder that's disconnected that you got to feel like you got to jump across, or you're on a mountain jumping up. You conquered the world, but really understanding where they're at personally, and mentally, and emotionally. Getting to that level builds trust, because that's a vulnerability, and trust starts with vulnerability, right? I mean, so where are you at today? What do you got going on? And well, if you're at that state, what's going on? And you truly can't be superficial to have a really powerful peer advisory group. You got to, business issues, yes, but where are you mentally? You might have lost an HR person, you might have lost a key person, and you're struggling, and it's all falling on you. So, really evaluating that, quarterly, every 5, 6 months, whatever is important. And then always having some type of educational component, not always technical. I know we're talking CIOs, but it's something technical, how to handle people like we're talking about. How, maybe sometimes it is technical, maybe it's HR policies and things of that nature. But I think changing that up and having the educational component be well rounded is important to keep people growing, because it's all about growth through collective intelligence, right? Whether it's bringing somebody outside in or you helping each other out, because you're either growing or dying. You're never flatlining.
What tended to work for our group, and just hearing you talk, there's some commonality here. It's a collection of minds coming together. The way we structured it, and this structure was announced and content was announced ahead of the meeting. There was always a deck of some kind, give a high level agenda. Now I was part of a Microsoft user group, so I would embed upcoming events and just get people thinking. So there was some structure there, but we always had an educational session. We always had a guest speaker. Sometimes it was a vendor, and usually the group collectively would say, "Hey, one of our initiatives for next year, or one of our considerations or discoveries for next year, is in warehouse management systems." And so, okay, so we jot down these ideas and say, "Okay, do we want to bring a vendor in this space to talk about Bill's challenges next year?" So we would vote. It was very democratic in content. So we always had that. We always had I forget how I named it, but it was dealt around pains. Pains and challenges. It may sound negative, but it was very positive. But it was kind of a roundtable session of what's been, since we last met, what's been really biting at you or causing you heartburn. Then we'd have a customer. We'd have one of the participants give a highlight session. Could be the initiative that they were just doing, and it kind of feeds back to your point of, you start to know each other, and one meeting might be at their location in their conference room. So a lot around that community building. I miss it today. It was a powerful group.
Did you have a specific size that you shot for the user group size?
Great question. We found 20 people in the room to be the sweet spot, give or take. I've been in meetings where it was, like in Chicago, for example, or around Detroit, where you had 80 people in the room. That you lose the intimacy, it now becomes kind of classroom ish. I didn't enjoy those that much. I can go to a conference and have that. I want a group that's, that 15, 20, 25. You're starting to push it, but that's been my sweet spot.
Yeah, so we have found that 15-ish is the ideal, because that whole trust and vulnerability factor, I think, starts fading away when you get bigger. Because I mean, you want to talk about some pretty important stuff. I mean, if the company is struggling, maybe you want to show them the financials and let them poke holes in it and say, hey, what about this one? What about this one? I mean, you really want to do that. I was in a IT peer advisory group called Heartland Technologies Group back in the day when I owned Pinnacle, and we had to show our financials. We had to give a quarterly
Oh,
report, and but we
you're
were
signing
regional.
NDAs?
Yeah, all NDAs. But yeah, but we flew in from different regions, right? So it was like
Oh man. All
we
right.
We weren't competitive. I mean, we weren't competing in the markets, but we were in the same markets. You might want to say, man, my profit margins are terrible. I need some help figuring out what I could do, what's going on, and that's when you get real. You really don't want to get too big where you don't want to do that. And then the other thing, and I don't know how you handle that, is if you had people in there that were just takers, you got to contribute too. It's like hiring a board for yourself. And you don't want to have some schmuck on your board. You want to have somebody that's going to help you.
You have to quickly assess, hey, is this thing being run right? Or if you're the one that's forming it, you want to surround yourself with at least one other, I'll call, partner in this endeavor. Never go it alone. I find out, back to the fizzle factor, that it will creep up on you. You'll start to dilute what you're trying to form here, but you need someone as a check and balance for yourself. And I found the sweet spot to be three. One focused on venue and sort of that was kind of my role. And we went to Progressive Field, and we got to hold the bullpen, the red phone on the field. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
part of the tour. So I was also the content moderator, because when you're in the room, especially if you have a guest speaker, you have to make sure conversations flowing. My dead air, I hate dead air. So if we're all sitting there and no one's saying anything, I'm going to throw out another question or expand on a point that was just given. Then I'd have someone who is focused on, I'll call it the marketing of it, the right social media, the right messaging about what's coming up next. I had Holly Cudel from Inovia. She was part of mine, and she was awesome. People would walk in, if it was, I remember one time it was close to Valentine's Day, so she had these Hershey Kisses and these little niceties on the table, just small touches like that. And she was very, very outgoing, very pleasant. And then I had one that was really focused on the content. Like, hey, we very interested in talking about WMS. Boom, man. She would go to the top three in that space for the ERP systems that us as a group are using, and she was a bulldog.
So that from that perspective, you're talking about self-user groups, right? Renaissance executive forums model is you have a paid facilitator, right? I mean, it's a franchise. Their model is you pay to be part of the group, right? But we have people that are later in their careers that have experience, but they're facilitators. They're not consulting. They're facilitators that help you keep the meeting going, keep the content flowing. But one cool thing we did last year, and you'll get a kick out of this. We have the CIO. Most of them are business owner groups, right? But we started a couple CFO groups where like-minded CFOs get together. Same thing, because they're dealing with issues. We started a CIO group. Q3 of last year, we brought both those groups together and said, okay, you know how CFOs and CIOs usually have tension? And we brought them together and said, let's talk about the tension we have. And we listed out whiteboards, and I'll tell you what, it was
Dude.
magic, Tony, magic, man. It's like, because we just put it on the table, because before it was IT is a cost center, reduce it. No, IT is a strategic
That's a
asset.
trigger. That triggers me. Cost center.
So yeah, it's a strategic asset, So it's but it was so cool. We had a clear the air meeting, and it was fabulous, man, because that just needed to get put on the table. And when does one CIO and a CIO and CFO get together and just do that? Hardly ever.
Let's circle back now to your to the point you were making, which I loved, and that is making sure you have the right people there. 30 people one time, 40 people next time, 10 people the next time. Like, how do you start to chip away and get the group that you want?
Everybody struggles. You talk about the people that show up occasionally, and as a forum leader, we call them, we don't want to be like this boss mentality.
You're out. Get out. Go on. Let's go.
So we flipped it over and said, hey, like, Tony, if you and I were in a group and say you only came quarterly, I'd say, hey, Tony, I'm in here because I need you and your brain in here with me. Now, when you don't show up and I do, that shows that we're not committed to each other and truly helping each other out. It is true peer stuff. And It's like,
Yeah.
give me the peer commitment or don't.
But I love what you're saying, like having those one-on-ones, because I don't want some off in the room who's just there because I get a day away from the office,
Right.
and I get to be in this cool place, right? I don't want that.
Again, not fluffing around, and everybody has seasons of life, and you got patience for seasons of life, kids issues, whatever. But
But
you,
sometimes,
you
but sometimes pattern. You're looking for the pattern. Like you've mentioned this in other episodes where, hey, you don't know what's going on in that particular day in a person's life, and we all are mindful of that. But if it becomes 2, 3, 4, all right, now we have something a little bit different, right? What's the right cadence that you'd want to have for for an assembly like this?
we do half hour or half days once a month, and then there's a retreat once a year, the 2 days, whatever it is, and then usually you sprinkle in a fun month like summer times. Go out and shoot guns together, go ride go-karts together, get that bonding mentality. And a half day is usually tolerable from stepping away from the business. And if you can't give yourself a half day to be better, man, I think you got to think about something else, because a half day to improve yourself, man. You should be doing that.
Yeah, a cadence like that, I think you would quickly weed out those that aren't taking it seriously. Our our cadence, but we were self-run, was quarterly, and I was over the top with venue and those things. It wasn't a second job, but it was close to
Uh-huh.
being a second job. That was, but for a group like what we're talking about and what Bill's gonna bring to the table, seems like the admin side and getting things organized is off. That's not a burden for the participants, or am I misreading that?
No, it's not at all. And the other thing they do is, I know they have the forum leaders have one-on-ones, usually quarterly or 6 months with each member, just to make sure if there's anything going on that they need teed up, they need help teeing up in their business, they don't know how to bring it up. Because sometimes some stuff is sensitive. So when you have that forum leader that's saying, okay, Tony, if you have this issue, you don't know if you should bring it up or not. That one-on-one helps clear the air, and it also brings diverse perspectives too. You wouldn't think a woodworking company and a manufacturing company and a credit union would have things to talk about together, and they do, because it's process, it's business, it's people, it's technology, but that diverse minds, boy, I've seen some cool solutions come to play, and you was like, man, I would have never thought about that.
This topic should be in the minds of all of our viewers, because if you're not part of a peer group, or you're thinking of reaching out to join one, or if you have the appetite to consider forming one of your own, you want to make sure you watch this episode again, and definitely stay tuned for our next one. Not only does it help you grow yourself professionally, but it gets you with like-minded individuals in the room, and the power of that cannot be emphasized enough, because when you were in it, you'll realize and probably say to yourself, what took me so long?
And Tony, you should take note inventory of the 5 people you're hanging around with the most, because you will inherit and adopt some of their habits. So be careful about that, and make sure you're hanging around with good people that are going to pull you up, and be the dumbest person in a room in one of those peer groups or one of those 5, because that's where you're going to grow. If you're always the smartest person, you're not growing.
Great advice. Craig, my IQ is up 10 since we've got together here. Thank you for that.
You got it, Tony.
Until next time, we'll see you.
Yeah.
The makeup of these peer groups, what do you talk about? How do you apply that to both business and your personal life? Was that a bull comment?
No, I like it. I like it. Franchise of Renaissance Executive Forums, which is peer groups, and something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill is a managing partner, and then everything escapes me. So as I'm reading this, I'll probably cut to your face so they don't see me
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you're the smartest person in the room, shame on you, right?
Yep.
And if you think you're the smartest person in the room, come on. You're
Yeah.
you're you're a narcissist.
You get over yourself.
Yeah, get over yourself, right?
That's it.
The bottom two.